Well, hello. Welcome to June 7th, 2022. It's election day, which means I have a long day ahead of me. Be working into the night, in fact. All right. My name's Kurt. This is my daily good life meditation, an exercise that I do every morning shortly after waking up and cleaning myself up, ready for my day. I go over my life objectives and principles, enumerate them categorically, think about them a little bit, and I also think about how I did applying these to yesterday, namely to the challenges and opportunities that I encountered, and then plan for the coming day. First, last night and yesterday, typical night, up at an hour before the alarm. Nothing really significant happening at work, so I didn't have anything to worry about. At least I wasn't making stuff up like I was last night. But, didn't get a full night's rest. Yesterday was a very typical day. Just powered through the day. I had a full day of work. What can I say? It was a day in the coal mines yesterday. No real challenges, no opportunities in particular. Let's do the good life meditation. First, my 7 objectives as follows. Number 1 is to be always ready to die, to have everything in a settled state, so that if I pass today, I've left my affairs and my relationships and my life's work in good order. 2 is to make a good and effective use of time. This is the key to help me to pass, to if I need to die suddenly, to help me to die more readily, or at least without too many little backwards glances, by making good use of my time, filling my days with forward progress, personally and professionally. Number 3 is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That's precisely the 7 objectives and 30 principles. I do this by performing this exercise of looking at them, thinking about them, sometimes in a cursory fashion, sometimes more deeply. This is the thing that helps me to maintain my objectives and the things I use to help me get there. Next is the cultivation of good emotional reactions, to become a person who can react well to the circumstances around me, less vulnerable to being ambushed, or if not less vulnerable to being ambushed, because ambushes come, at least less vulnerable to an overt poor reaction to said ambush. It used to be that I would react in a moment. Something would happen, and you could read it upon my face about what my internal response to that was, or at least my internal impression. It would be my external view that would be my response, right? Less so now. I can keep a measured countenance and a controlled demeanor better than I ever could before, come what may. Next is the performance of good actions, just doing good things throughout the day. Good things being defined as activities and decisions and ends that help improve the well-being of thinking creatures in particular. Next comes the recognition of my true limits and my true opportunities, to better ascertain what is possible and what is not, or at least what is not influence. Anything that I cannot influence. And recognize what I can, and then apply my efforts towards those things where I can make a difference. That's a good way to summarize it. I think it was foolish of me to almost in a waking dream last night, to imagine myself as a flight attendant on an airplane when there's no such thing. Although I can't really control my dreams, I guess. Lastly, to do just one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, as I'm doing right now. I'm actively controlling the rate and measure and tone and volume of my speaking, to be so that I have a time to think about the words before they come out, even though it doesn't sound sometimes like I'm doing that. I stumble and trip over things. I go up a dead-end alley, have to pause and turn around and come back. But it's an active effort. And the more that I do this, the better it seemingly becomes. Okay, next is my 30 principles. Number 1 is the principle of war, to always be fighting against, well, everything. Anything that's important, that is. But particularly against the things that I already believe are true, as well as the new propositions that come to me by way of my own volition or are proposed to me by others that I consider as candidates for belief. I really need to fight against those things. I need to try to take them apart, see if they can survive my attack. And if they do, maybe they're worth believing, or at least holding in a tentative state for a while. Next is the principle of reason, and the 4 sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, doubt, and humiliation, which are the expectations and the hallmarks of a reasonable life. Next is the Homunculus, the suggestion that though I do not seem to have a soul, I do have a consciousness. And then the Anchorhold, the further suggestion that my consciousness is trapped here inside my skull, can't get out, and will die with me. Next is the home of good and evil, the idea that right and wrong, good and evil, do not exist in some absolute sense in the universe, but are instead mere opinions and bias that we hold, we develop, we create even. But they're our own possession. Next is the principle of purpose, and there are 3 sub-principles in my life, sub-purpi in my life, sub-purposes. These are biology, to be a successful father, and by extension husband and family man, to raise my daughter to a successful adulthood. Success means that she's viable and on her own. And then virtue, to be a virtuous man, like I said before, working to improve the well-being of thinking creatures. And then my 3rd purpose is the sharing of my story, going alone, and the good life creed that can be found within. Next comes the atomic principle. Everything is made of little bits and pieces, atoms and molecules, that are changing and flowing into other things and transforming and recombining. In the end, it all kind of devolves down to particles, right? Down to bits and pieces, atoms. Next comes the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that nature is, including people and jobs and even a particular day. It's the nature of today to be an election day. When I recognize what the nature of things are and abide that, I do better. And then the pirate ride is next. The idea that free will is an illusion, a very convincing illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. Boy, it sure feels like we're making our decisions, but I don't think we really are. I think we're just decision engines that are pushed and nudged by the circumstance in the world around us. If not fully, I think nearly so, almost fully dependent upon the inertia of the world to help us to make our choices, or to fully make our choices for us. We make the choice, but it's all about the circumstance and the precedent in terms of what that choice will be. Right or left are dependent upon the nudgings of everything else. Can't prove this. I hold it on faith. It's the weakest part of my greed, I believe. At least has the most glaring weakness that I can see. Okay, next is maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. A mature life is a wise in which we can wisely remember and reflect upon our past successes and failures and improve and do better in the future. Next comes the social principle. We are social creatures and we need each other. So it's better to go down the roads that we can take detours on our own. We can go alone for a while, but it's good to come back. It's quite dangerous to not come back. Next comes the principle of public speaking and the sub-principle of prudence. Being very careful about what we say, circumspect, using deliberate words, not showy words, flashy words, but the best words. To speak well and clearly and in a relevant manner in every circumstance that we're in both speaking and writing. And to never, ever, ever, ever gossip. Next is the principle of temperance, a suggestion to be very careful about what we do. In terms of consumption. That includes work and our recreation, and, eating and drinking, everything. Just take it just in moderation. Maybe not have that extra cookie, or maybe even one less than we desired. Temperance has 3 sub-principles: suffering, simplicity, and apathy. We suffer when we tell ourselves no. A temperate life is a simple life. And apathy is the tool that we can use to, when we recognize what is outside of our control, to divorce ourselves from the sense of connection to it. Okay, the next principle is the horror show, suggesting that life is a terrible, horrible place, just terrible, awful things happening all the time to people all around us, and including ourselves. If not now, soon. It's good to remember that. To be forewarned, to ready my readiness. It kind of makes me nervous. I kind of lose, my speech kind of gets a little when I anticipate the horror to come. But it's good to be able to be ready for it, to know it's coming, and to do the best that I can to prepare. Even though I doubt I can be fully prepared in any capacity. Next is a principle called that which must be borne, carried. We have to carry the effect of the horror show, and we also have to carry the effect of the responsibilities that we've taken on in our lives, particularly those responsibilities that relate to the commitments to other people, namely children. Those things have to be taken very seriously. They bind us for the rest of our lives. Like I am bound to, even though I'd like to retire, I am bound to see my daughter through past university, to see her settled, set and safe with the start of her adult life. It's the commitment that I made when I became a father. Okay, next is 2 principles. Distraction and agency in the great indifference. We spend our whole lives distracting ourselves all the time so that we don't have to see the fact that we seem to be alone. There doesn't seem to be any God or gods that are looking out for us. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories about salvation and protection and forever. Doesn't seem like that's true. So we distract ourselves so we don't have to witness that. My suggestion is to face it, to go alone, as the book says, face down the emptiness, and then resolve to come back shaken, broken in a way, and ready to take control of your life, our lives, and live the best we can in the time that we've got, knowing that there appears to be nothing more. It has a way of galvanizing our living. And if I'm right, and this is the only life we get, then it helps us to make a good use of the available time. It's a sober perspective. Excuse me. Okay, next is the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else or be doing anything else or to be anywhere else, but to be okay with my current circumstance, attitude, emotional state, etc. All the while striving for better. Next comes the Path of Wildness, which is a way to move forward and to get out of a life circumstance and into something new. It doesn't even have to be a bad circumstance. It could just be, it's time for a change. We step on the path when we begin entertaining the thoughts of the change and putting forward facts to deliberate on them. And then we move forward when we make the decision, even if we don't have enough information to make a fully informed decision, and we accept the risk that comes. That's the Path of Wildness. It's easy to find. It's the course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. Next comes the risk of avoiding risk. The life has surface level risks, namely school, job, home, family, and security. And then the deep risk of spending some time to find ourselves, so to speak. Not all people seem to be drawn to the deeper, to applying for the deeper, after the deeper risk. But if you are one of us who is, it's a worthwhile thing to do, and to do it young. It doesn't go away, it seems. But it does. It can be placated if addressed at an early age. Harder to do every year that passes. Next is sin and damnation. The categories of sin in my world are, well, not really the categories, basically the top level labels are doing things that are untrue, being untrue, believing things that are untrue, or gossiping. Gossip's a bad thing. In fact, these sins are 7. They are falsity, being untrue, credulity, believing things too readily, faith, belief founded upon belief, which is a circular situation, superstition, belief in things that are categorically identified as nonsense, or quite likely to be nonsense, authority, belief based on the weight and pomp and circumstance, and being impressed by the person or the institution who shares the belief. Dogma, belief based on tradition, the canonical nature of things, or just the popular view. And then the last one is gossip, as I said. Next comes complete oblivion, the reminder that after death there appears to be nothing to follow. We won't, since there doesn't seem there'll be any afterlife, there'll be no, and we don't have a soul, and there isn't any gods. We won't see our loved ones again. We won't have a chance to reconcile any differences, and there will be no application of justice in the end. we have to pursue those things now while we live. It's the only chance that we seemingly get. Okay, next comes the Great Life Adventure, one or more experiences that kind of becomes the centerpiece of our life. And then the Season of Philosophy, the recognition that a time may come when the words start to come, the muse starts to whisper in our ear, and it's good to have the pen and paper ready to record what comes. And then the bullseye aim, striving for the mark but usually missing. The uphill climb, up, 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 trudge, trudge, trudge. Arena and utility, keeping our principles close and honed and remembered so that we can apply them as needed, because life is an arena for the execution of our better living. And then nothing is enough, a simple reminder beyond temperance to reduce our needs and our consumption down to the bare minimum. There's something that comes of that kind of simple life. And then lastly, the principle of fun, a reminder to have a good time, to enjoy the here and now, enjoy the anticipation of what's to come, and the remembrance of what's been. Don't forget to have fun. And then that's it. That's my Good Life Creed. Let's plan for the day. I think I have like 3 or 4 meetings today. A pretty straightforward day. I have a couple of problems that I need to tackle. They're on my mind. That was probably what was keeping me up last night. I'll see if I can do that today. These things seem to always work out, though. And then I have, like I said, a long day, working overtime into the evening. We'll see how late I have to go. Anyway, that's my Good Life meditation for today. Thank you for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe.